Do you believe change is possible if you invest enough time and effort into it? Do you believe that we can have different mindsets, change our mindsets? Do you believe we actually can change for the better? Or are you like, well, the moment that this is a fixed situation, nothing is going to change? I've tried things so many times over and over again, and the result is still the same. Well, if you're thinking like that, then maybe today is time to watch a little bit longer. Now, for me, this has been the weirdest week. So you're watching Friday Night Live with me, and it took me a while before I was like, but what was the one thing that this entire week had in common? Now, what I remember most, and you probably hear this when I'm talking, so I don't know how long I will last today, is that I had a minor surgery on my nasal cavities. So they put like a little rod in there, some current went through it, and the goal is that my nasal cavities are actually now enlarged. Um, so, unfortunately, before they get enlarged, everything is a little bit swollen. So, I have a little bit trouble breathing more than I normally have. And well, hopefully, the next week you can already hear a difference. So, fingers crossed. Now, let's start with that part of change. The one thing that I noticed actually was straight away the day after I had full blown sinusitis. Fortunately for me, it lasted only like a day, 2 days maybe. It's almost gone. The really splitting headache and all the other aching are gone. But why is this important? Because I said so for years. People, it hurts every now and then here, and it's probably sinusitis. And then they would say, well, we don't see anything. Well, now I can say after what you've done, that's exactly the same feeling. So go investigate it again. What was the other thing that's so important about it is I know that I have trouble breathing. You can hear it on my videos, and I breathe a lot through my mouth. But in order to get the doctors to actually take a look at it, you have to come up with something different. In my case, oh, apparently I have sleeping apnea. And do you know who came up with that suggestion? Actually, it was Cheeky Joe, my friend from the UK, and who runs the Jason Begay fan club. So for CPD fans, that's Cheeky Joe. Anyway, Cheeky Joe said to me, you need to get something done. So I had it checked out, and they said, yeah, you do need something else. So I got this, I always call it a mouthpiece that has a very different load to it. I think it might also be called a recliner. I'm not sure. It's what you put in here to keep keep my jaw in this case from going backwards. It goes forward, and well, that should actually help with the breathing. Well, no such luck when it came to sounds. And it's kind of funny because one of my friends said, well, I don't know if you snore. You've never spent the night with me. And then I said, oh, but you do now, because at one time I had fallen asleep during the day and you had guests over at the pool and they heard me. So, and I have to say, it's kind of embarrassing, and it does take its toll on me because I don't feel comfortable sleeping with people in their houses when they are not aware of it, because apparently it's pretty bad. Now, the other thing is, it of course causes also physical physical ailments. Well, from a dry mouth to actually having a lack of oxygen in the brain, which causes fatigue and headache. And it's actually pretty bad for the brain too. So from wanting people to investigate the headache and the problem with my nose, I had to go all the way going to a sleep routine exam, and hasn't finished yet. So just so you know, in order to get things done. So change can take a long time, but if you keep going at it consistently, things will happen. And sometimes we need technology to get things done, and other times we don't. So moving on to the part of technology. I had training this week, a lot of training. Brendon Burchard, Ed Milet, Evan Carmichael, Damon Willis. But AI, Evan Carmichael, we talked about videos and we talked about shorts and longer ones. So long form content basically is 10 plus minutes. Short form content is usually somewhere between 15 seconds and 1 minute. I don't know what it's called when it's in between. I don't know. So please don't ask me. But anyway, Evan made it possible for us to ask a number of questions, including 2 experts, which is always nice. And one of the things I asked is, I love doing those captions. Well, no. Let's rephrase myself. I don't mind initially getting the captions out there. And I don't mind, in essence, to look at them when we are talking about short videos. But when we are talking about videos which are an hour long, that's a whole different story, because when it comes to storage, my phone is simply not used to that amount of storage. Well, not to the rendering, which uses internal storage. And because I've got a lot of videos and photos on there, it usually means looking at things, throwing things away, starting things back up, emptying the cache of certain apps. So, it takes a lot of time. So I asked Evan, so what's the rule when it comes to captions? And he said, well, 1 minute at least. And after that, people don't mind anymore. So the 1 minute is actually linked to people who watch short form content. So short, remember, 15 seconds to a minute. 15 seconds if you actually do it on story on Instagram. If you use a reel on Instagram, it's like 1 minute. If you actually upload a long reel, well, it's probably like a post, it's max 15 minutes. But I could actually go live on there, but I've learned that people just scroll on. So I don't bother airing it on Instagram anymore. I could have done it, but I don't. Now, why is this important? Because, well, it saves me a lot of work, to be quite honest. And he said, well, when it comes to short form content, people want to watch it, for instance, at work, when they are in the restroom. Not sure if he said so, but someone talked about it. That's how much I know. And, wherever it is. So maybe in the waiting room, and then it's easy if there are captions underneath. So for the shorter videos, say 15 minutes, max 20, that could be done. But for the ones who are longer, he said, those people actually want to watch you. They want to listen to you. So they don't need the captions. And I was like, phew. Now, what do captions and AI have to do with one another? Years ago, someone said to me, you should be using captions. And then at some point, people said, you should start using AI. Well, the captions, I looked at YouTube. I'm not too thrilled what YouTube does, but it's doable. But again, when we're talking about an hour-long video, it's a lot to go through and scroll through, and I don't really have that attention span. Well, most often I don't. So that leaves the short form content. But working with this app called InShot, it actually has a better version of captions than YouTube does. So I was very happy about it. Now I remember in the beginning that YouTube consistently wanted to make it Dutch what I was talking, and I was like, I'm talking English. I have clicked on it, English. Well, if you try to transfer English into Dutch just based on pronunciation, you get really weird things. So that took me like forever, and at some point I was like, oh, but now we're years down the line. AI has absolutely improved, and I do see the possibilities. So whereas I didn't like using AI initially, I'm now like, okay, let's go see what it can do for me. And yeah, when Evan talked about it and about the captions, I was like, okay, this I can do. So for the shorts, it will remain on there. So for instance, like on Instagram. And as for the long form content, I probably use a piece of it and then that's it. Then he said something else. And he said, well, if you want to do shorts, have a separate channel. And I said, but when we have shorts, you can click on the video, which is related to the long form content. And he said, they're not going to watch it. So do yourself a favor, short form viewers, so 15 seconds up till a minute, they are not going to watch any more or any longer than that 1 minute. So you have to do it. And I think YouTube short is actually 30 seconds. So you have to do it in that time. And I was like, oh, okay. Second channel, check. I'm not sure if I like what I'm hearing right now. So on one hand, I was happy. On the other hand, not so much. But this is about progress and about what needs to be done in order to gain progress. And to make a little switch to Brendon Burchard, Brendon Burchard was talking about which platform are you going to use and how much time are you going to spend on it. So Evan has taught me how to make the perfect thumbnail. I can do it pretty easily. I don't always feel like it, but I can do it. Because he helped me actually pick out the colors. Well, the dark blue is of course my color, but especially the font and all that stuff. And he checked if it was readable. So that's all due to Evan, and also due to, I know his name and I haven't said it for a long time, so I'll get there. He knows, if he were to be watching this, he knows who he is. They used to have a gaming channel together, and they were doing, I think, Minecraft. And well, so that's, both of them would take a look at it. So that's really good. And I can actually see his face. It's just, I'm so lousy when it comes to names. So Brendon said, don't spend too much time on making it all beautiful, which is basically the same as Evan says, don't make it perfect, which is also what I teach my own clients and my coaches when they go for, but we want to do things like you're doing. And I say, do you think I accomplished this in 1 day or in 1 year? Well, think again. It doesn't go that easy. So, well, it's one step at a time. And well, we talked about certain things. I had made this 7-step worksheet, and I got the question, do you want us to fill this out before we actually have training. My response was, well, actually, it's there. So you actually do it yourself. And I don't mind helping you with it. But, I do the worksheets so you can do the other stuff. And, think about it, take your time instead of rushing it in like 5 minutes. But well, so getting back to change, and this might seem like a leap, but it's not actually. So Brendan had a guest on the show at Milet. Well, actually, every 2 weeks at Milet is there, and or every other week. I'm not sure. I think he's like there every 2 weeks. And at Milet, and Brendan had this discussion, and they were talking about how to save up money. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So, what Ed said is if you don't change your routine, nothing is going to change. So, you can get a lot of money all of a sudden, but if you're used to spending it right up till the last penny, last dime, last cent, however you want to call it, then you will just go through it in a heartbeat. Well, I know what he talks about because I'm one of those people who has really a lot of trouble hanging on to money. I absolutely know. So the good news is that we can actually change even at our age. So books have been written about it. But what he said made sense. So he came with some suggestions. And this brings me back to what I said. Change is possible, but it might take time. If you are willing to work on it, see it happen, then things will happen over time. And sometimes it's about technology that needs changing. Sometimes it's about knowledge that we need to gather. Sometimes it's about experience. It's a number of things which actually can help us move forward towards change. But sitting back and doing nothing and expecting the world to change, well, the world will change around you. That's no problem. But the question is, does it change in a way that you actually want it to change? So continuing on about the whole change. Now, do you remember that on December 1st, I started doing Instagram posts and I said I'm going to do it every day. So December, January, February, March, April, May, and we're at the end of June. And people, it was 200 days less Monday. But as you may know, I got the nasal surgery on Monday. And so I wanted to make it something big. It didn't happen. It just didn't happen. Quite honestly, I usually don't use the counter anymore because I'm posting every day anyway. And well, maybe I skip one day, but usually I don't. If I do, it's because I've fallen asleep and I will make up for it in the forwarding days. But I've learned certain things when it comes to consistency. Also, was a big thank you to my coach, but also to this one app called Duolingo. So at midnight, Duolingo says there's a new day. And if I forgot to do my Spanish lessons, so Duolingo is a language app. Well, nowadays you can also learn music and you can learn mathematics on it. But primarily it's about learning languages. And I, when I change time zone or when I'm really tired, I tend to forget it. And what often happens is that at 10 or 11, I'm like, oh, I still have like 1 or 2 hours and I postpone it. And what I've learned now is that when I think about it, somewhere between 8 and midnight, that's when I actually do it. So if there's a possibility to even do it like 1 minute, then I'll do it. The cool thing is there is this a little girl who is almost 10 years old. And oh, she's such a smart lady. So she's the daughter of one of my friends. So for her, I'm Auntie Lexi. And well, she started learning English. Well, it actually started with learning Turkish because they went to Turkey, and then she realized that she wanted to switch to English. So she's doing English now. And she well, she was talking about it, and then her mom and I said, well, if you manage to do it 30 days in a row, well, I'm going to make it into the family subscription. Now, the first day I was like, don't tell me you skipped it. And then she said, Auntie Lexi, you saved me. Well, I don't know if I did or if it was the streak from the app, but because she's now part of the family subscription, she got free streaks as well. But I don't want the free streaks. I just want to continue on and on and on and on. So talking to my coach about it, we sort of discussed that, by the time it's around 9 and I'm like, oh, I should be doing Duolingo. I not only do Duolingo, but I also think about what are the other things that I want to do. And one of those things, of course, has to do with posting on Instagram. So I'm not that late most of the time nowadays because I'm like, well, I want to do it before I want to sleep and then wake up again because, I've been involved with all the editing. So it's easier if it's already out there and I can actually schedule it if I would like to. So that's one of the things. And well, Brendan talked about it. He said, if you do it on Instagram, make sure that he used to say post 4 times a day. And he talked about circular virality. So basically what he says is take, for instance, this video and use the most useful things from it. Well, and then we get back to AI. And fortunately, AI is actually helping me right now to get certain things done. So I'm very happy with the whole AI thing because they have like shorts as in under 1 minute and they select them for me. So that's good. So I don't have to think about it too much. But sometimes I'm like, well, actually, I like this part or this part. And that's when I actually focus on that part. But there's a lot of time involved when it comes to it. So now, let's see. We've talked about doing things consistently and getting used to it. So when we talk about change, it went from posting every day on Instagram, then doing the Friday Night Live weekly on Fridays. Then it was Monday motivational message. Well, actually, it was Monday morning, but that didn't work out for me. So it became the Monday motivational message. And I've learned to actually start doing that on Sunday. And all has to do with sort of getting enough sleep because I tend to do it late at night. For some reason, that seems to work very well on my end. But then, like I said, I don't sleep. So there are things I need to change. Now, what I noticed this week was because I was still recuperating from the whole surgery. So it was literally minor surgery. They put some gauze in my nose, cocaine was put on it. Of course, I got an allergic reaction. And so first of all, I couldn't breathe because my nose was clogged up. And then I got trouble with my throat. So I said, can I use my medication? So you put a tablet in your mouth and it melts. And yeah, sure, go ahead. So I did. So I could breathe again. And by that time, it was easier to swallow, to breathe through my nose as well. And well, then they did their magic and well, it was almost off I went. I had to go to the pharmacy, pick up some stuff and okay. So, like I said, the next few days, I felt like, oh, I don't feel good. And I know that feeling of sinusitis. And usually it lasts like 1 or at least 2 weeks. And if it's really horrible, 3 to 4 weeks. I remember that the Christmas prior to COVID, well, actually before COVID was official, I actually had such an episode where it took me like 2, 3 weeks before I actually felt like I want to move again. So I did my training, but most of the time I just had my camera off, but I did do the work. So Damon Willis, who is our supporter when it comes to CHPC coaching and marketing and sales. So he's the right-hand man from Brendan Burchard. And by the way, I know Evan through Brendan too. He told us to workshop our message. What is it that we want to get out there? And well, it was kind of interesting to I was sort of sitting, lying on my bed couch because I was, I didn't want to sit up straight. Everything was aching. I had been talking to one of my clients. But Damon also talked about what's that message. And when it comes to change, and I've noticed that this time again, is, and I'll throw it out there, and maybe you have an idea or not. So lots of people who knock on my door are people who are dealing with no perspective. Some of them are actually dealing with some sort of addiction, whether it's cutting themselves or using too much alcohol. Others, they are like, if something doesn't change, I'm going to jump. And well, fortunately, I have been able to help those people. I also know about people who knew that they had to be in a different environment in order to stay clean. And when I was talking about my target audience, I was like, okay, so what is it? People come to me who want to opt out. Those are people who want to learn, speak up, speak out, share their story. Well, actually, that's the answer. But they don't feel understood. So they want to feel heard, seen, understood, respected, and valued. And in order to do so, you need to learn to speak up, to communicate better, to actually, hang on for a sec. This is still the result of the surgery. Every now and then, something happens because I have to flush my entire, not only the nasal cavity, but also those areas here. So I know the Dutch words. I have no clue what they're called. Probably cavities. But then here underneath your cheekbones and here, so your forehead. Not sure what they're called, but getting back. So if you have heard me before, and that's one of the reasons why I'm actually also posting on LinkedIn, is one of the things that I'm really passionate about as well, is not only about being heard, seen, and understood, respected and valued, but especially at the workplace. Because for me, especially in the new century, it was hell to experience that I would start somewhere and I would have so much fun, and then after a while management would change and there we went again. And and that's one of the reasons I'll never work for a boss again. So, and on one end it's easier. So last week I picked up my disabled parking card, but then the correct version finally. And I was in this little office building, and apparently they had like some sort of coffee corner with a number of tables at the entrance. So we as visitors were asked to sit at those tables. Of course, no one said where the coffee machine was. But they seemed to think that I was a colleague of theirs, which was nice. So it was actually kind of fun. And it reminded me of the camaraderie I used to experience back in the days. And, it always helps when you can talk to someone. How do you do this? How do you do that? And things go so much quicker when you can actually consult someone and make an appointment. Okay, now we're going to go work on it. And of course, you have certain deadlines, you have things that you said you were going to do. So, and you report about that. So you do those things. And that's an entirely different story when you start working for yourself. Now, getting back to the whole thing. So I knew that my heart is in the place where employees do not get seen, heard, and understood. But also, I see the side of the business owner or the manager who has the same frustration. They have a plan, they're very passionate about things, but they cannot seem to get through to the other people. Now, as a business owner, of course, it's twofold. You have your business, and on the other hand, you have your life. So I do have business owners, which still actually stems from when I was doing things locally over here. But when it comes to doing things online, it's Lady Lexi Speaks Up. I teach you to speak up, speak out, share your story. But I don't share quite often, actually, I hardly ever share that part about the business owners. And thinking about it, talking to someone else, I realized, oh, this has to do with small business owners. And actually, I had the pleasant experience of helping out someone just recently. I'm waiting until we can continue on. And, because it gave me some insight in what the other person needed. So it was actually kind of cool to be doing it. And I could tell that I was in a hype, because afterwards I basically typed down the report and everything was in there. Unfortunately, no follow-up just now. I did ask, and the person was very happy with it, but no time just yet. So it's about knocking on the door and saying, hey, I'm here. So one of the things I also did last week, and I was actually kind of proud of it, is I did a live with two ladies, CHPC coaches, who, well, we get together every other week. Well, actually, we get together every week. But if 1 week we have training from Damon Willis, usually. And every other week we've decided to do a round robin. So we practice with one another, being the coach, coachee, and being the observer. So it's really high speed, but oh my God, you can learn so much from it. And what I liked was getting to know one another better. So we did a live the next day, and we talked about addiction. So one of the ladies, Anna, knows all about food addiction and how this leads to other addictions. Then there's Laura, who is a police officer and consults police officers dealing with addiction and also having to deal with addicts herself. I think she said she was addicted at some point, but I'm not sure. I really need to check that one. For me, what stuck was that she looks at people and she knows this is not what just happened. There's a whole story behind it. Anyway, someone left a comment, and it was exactly why we did the live. It had to do with stigma. And the stigma was about how good can a person be when you're addicted, and what defines a good person. Now, the funny thing was that prior to answering that question, I actually was on YouTube, and there was something about Nikki Sixx versus Kiss, and why Nikki Sixx had a problem with Kiss. So Nikki Sixx was inspired growing up by Kiss. And well, he didn't have a lot of money. He would listen on the streets and see what the latest trend was. And so he went from this kid who had to steal a guitar to someone who has his own businesses now, including a clothing line. I don't know if he still has it, actually. But, he has really stepped up his game. Now, a lot of musicians, and I know this from other musicians as well, they tend to use stuff. It's sort of part of the world. They either drink too much, or they are on painkillers, which is highly addictive, or they use other stuff. But it's actually an exception if you are not an addict. So I don't know if that actually only applies to the people who are my age and older. But, I tend to explain it like all of a sudden you're thrown into this different world. Everything can be done. You are catered to all your wishes and needs, and then you don't know how to handle it. So you get offered something, because that's the thing. There are always people there who are offering you, some powder or whatever it is. And that's where things, of course, go haywire. I mean, they're abroad, they don't know their way, but people know we need to be there. So it's to do with the lifestyle, what's being offered. Everything is new, and especially when you're young and you are in your 20s, you just want to try it all, but try to get rid of it. That's the main problem, and that's what Anna explained really well. She talked about the change in hormone levels and needing more in order to feel the same, and that's what I actually got told too. You need more of the same in order to function normally. So I said to the ladies, do you want to join me? Well, one just didn't answer, so she's kind of busy. And the other one was kind of honest, and she said, I don't feel at ease when it comes to it. So I don't want to pretend that I'm the expert. And that was a shame. So I did record the live. It's also out there on YouTube. I just never... normally I repost it, with captions and all, and I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to repost it? Do I need to put a different ending to it? Because normally I add a little something. If you want to see more about change, then click there, click. And I hadn't done so. So I still need to let her know that I've heard her and that I actually created an entire life around what she said, because I thought it was a really good one. So when it comes to change, we can be very like, oh, we're going to do it, be excited. And then when it comes down to it, it's lack of time, fear. What if we don't have the expertise? It's being distracted by other things which take more priority. And then something that started out like awesome then just goes haywire again. It's actually one of the reasons that I've got this tattoo on my hand. So only few people know what it means. And it stands for my virtual accountability partner. So that's a virtual partner, as in it's not there. It's I invented that person, and I know it's invented by me. And I basically asked the person to help me out to do certain things. and also to call me out when I don't do it. And that's why I have it on my hand here too. Now, I don't always, I don't always go to that place and to talk to that person. I often do, but every now and then I'm just too tired, and it's like, oh, I was supposed to do certain things. So I got this booklet recently. Yeah, it's a little bit different than the booklet that I showed you, because I don't need my worksheet in here to tell me what I need to do to go from negative to positive beliefs. I know. So, but I do write things in here as in what I've done and what I still need to do, and things which I think are very important. So, for instance, when Brendan gave us training, I put some stuff in there. And then when Evan said certain things and Damon did, I was like, okay, I need to put that in there too. So it helps me, and I can take it wherever I want. So this is sort of my real accountability booklet. It's based on a lot of other stuff that I've got. Now, getting back to change, I've started by talking about my health, my nasal cavities, and I'm going to go back to the walking. So I've discovered Pokemon Go about a year ago. Well, actually, there was Pokemon Sleep, which they introduced in July last year. And Pokemon Sleep used the Pokemon Go Plus. So you could use your phone and leave it on your mattress, or you could use the Pokemon Go Plus. And I've decided to actually go for Pokemon Go Plus. Then I started to actually play Pokemon Go. And, well, I had a second phone from whenever I am in the US. And at some point I realized that if I wanted to do parties, that I needed a second account, like a lot of Pokemon players do. And I was like, okay, let's use that. And so I actually now have 2 Pokemon Go Plus devices. One is connected to each phone. And I go outside. It monitors how much I sleep. If I think about clicking on it, it monitors how much I walk. And you have certain assignments. And why do I need it? Because it's so important that I do walk. I cannot walk for very long. And, well, my stamina, it's not what it used to be like years ago, which is the result of not having been able to stand on 2 feet and actually be able to walk. So, and also part of it, and hopefully, and then I get back to the beginning, that's going to be solved as well. My heart rate can go up really quickly, and that makes me really dizzy. So the motivation to actually go do stuff is like 0 to none. So when I'm with someone else, I will do it. But when I'm on my own, I remember being dizzy, and it takes me hours to get rid of that feeling of dizziness again. And I don't like it. So for over a year, I've been on a waiting list now for someone who knows all about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So 2 doctors who talked about hypermobility and the effect it has. So there's a whole story behind it. Nerve systems, they react a little differently. So there are certain things that I actually experience which other people do not experience. But my goal eventually, of course, is to get back to, well, at least for a major part, where I used to be. I never was like someone who could do a lot, because from an early age on already I was dealing with my joints. But it would be nice to actually say, okay, I'm climbing on my bike again. And even when I have wind against me, And then I'm still going to go for those 40 minutes and I'm climbing up there. Now, one of the reasons why I couldn't do that was not only because I was out of breath, because I'm used to being out of breath and having to breathe through my mouth. But at some point when I got off the bike and I had to go uphill, that's what really was hurting. Now the good news, that is changing lately. So I'm very happy about that. And that's where Pokemon Go comes into this entire story, because it's actually an incentive to actually have me do something even when I'm on my own. Now, do you remember that friend that I was talking about with the kid that plays Duolingo? Well, she and her little brother like it when I come over and actually take them outside and play Pokemon Go with them. So I know a lot more about it than their mom does, because I'm the fanatic player and she's not. But we do tend to go for a walk uh, when they don't have to go to bed just yet. And, I kind of enjoy that. So I've been creating new routes for them so they can actually use that. So it's kind of funny to be working with them, and it works motivating. And also there is a community in there. I'm and the funny thing is that actually the first time I got in contact with the community, it was someone who invited me. So I was looking, I found something on Facebook, and then when someone said I need to set up a new group, so he invited me. I got kicked out just as quickly, not because of him, but because of his friends. Of course, he had those friends for years, so I get it. And then someone else said, you need to go to that other group. So I actually had made a number of friends in that group, even though there were also, so the new ones, they actually liked me. It was the old ones in there who had always done their thing the way they did it. You couldn't appreciate me. So now I'm in a laid back group. And there's someone else in there, and it's kind of nice to actually be feeling that or experiencing that form of trust and experiencing what she does. And so she helps me out with certain things. And it's and we also talk about personal stuff in that group, and it really feels kind of special. So I've learned that actually, even though we're talking about online stuff, we are not alone. So that's good. So it helps me to get back to where I want to be, and that's good. So what else is there when it comes to change? Well, I think, oh yeah, there's the one thing. Um, I've talked about a lot of things which I, well, some things I knew, some things were presented to me in a different way. So those are things that I'm going to be working on this weekend and the next week. But one thing that stood out was visualization. So, being a therapist, an energetic therapist, that's what my background is. Before I actually started to become coach, I do a lot of meditations as well. So I'm used to hypnotherapy. And when it comes to mindset, and I'm so intrigued when it comes to mindset, I want to know all about the brain and how it functions. So when we talk about the brain, and that's one of the reasons why I'm also talking about change, because when it comes to doing things every day again and again and again, then we tell our brains that we are reliable. And if I were to stop doing certain things, then I tell my brain the opposite. You cannot depend on me. And by having shown myself and my brain and others that I've actually done it for over 200 days in a row, so probably today 204. Um, it's it's about proving myself that I can actually do it and I can change certain things if needed. And going back to the visualization, so one of the things that I keep talking about over and over and over again is the brain doesn't know the difference between things which are actually happening in the here and now and things which we are experiencing because we focus on it. And that's why chromotherapy can work so well. Not always. Let me say that it doesn't always work the way we want it to work. But usually it can pretty much work really well, especially when it comes to experiencing certain things where there's a huge emotion linked to it. And then we go through it again and again and again, going back to the safe place every time. And then at some point, when in real life you experience a certain situation, then it's no longer scary. Now, when we talk about the minor surgery I had, I was like, okay, so I visualized that it was a walk in the park. They talked about two methods, and one was the gauze, the other one was an injection needle. So it was like, okay, well, if they use the gauze first, then they can, use the shot, the injection needle to finish the job, which is exactly what they did. So she complimented me for being so at ease. Well, I can tell you, if you've had piercings, they're way worse. And I'm used to people actually going with a little tube down my nose into my throat to see what's going on. So I know it's not scary. And so that was easy. What, of course, I didn't expect was the full-blown sinusitis that I got straight away after. So that was a little bit of a downer. But I do believe that the whole visualization helps us to actually get there where we want to be. By seeing the outcome, we do get to realize, like, hey, this is where we can go. And by repeating it over and over again and writing down which actions we can take, what we need to know, and also figuring out what makes us afraid to take certain action, and really be honest about it to yourself, we can actually change things. So visualization is one thing, but we also have to take action. So a mood board is one thing, you put it on there, but then you have to, of course, talk about it. So that's why we talk about affirmations, so repeating the outcome in your head. Usually we are too busy with other stuff to actually spend time on it. And it was kind of funny because Brandon said, well, you go to social media because you want to post something on there, you want to check your statistics. What are you doing? You are ending up watching all these cute movies, in my case, about the cats who are like really relaxing, or people who are dancing, because I think it's so wonderful if I see them do certain moves and learning all those things. So yeah, I'm highly appreciative watching it. I'm like, wow, awesome. And actually I do like to dance, but it's a little bit hard with crutches and one foot and a few toes. And now I'm still dealing with getting the whole stability back. So yeah, I'm getting there though. I'm getting there, and I like to dance. So all considered, is, do we visualize what we are afraid of? So the outcome we don't want. We're so good at thinking about, oh my God, what if this happens and what if that happens? And then we make it bigger and bigger. And we add this part and then we add the next part and then something else. And that's the one thing that we don't want to do. So it's so important to get back and go back to where we want to be. So one of the things that I actually posted was about this little guy over here. So this is Chief Rockstar. Chief Rockstar has been with me, well, since September 21st. That's when we made the little guy. And Chief Joe had her own Hanky Boo. And her daughter, Call Me Anything, had her own horror version as well. She likes Halloween and all that stuff. So it's a pink one with purple, and she'll probably correct me. I think a white striped suit. But it's, I've taken this little guy with me. I've posted him on my blog, and I've used him to not only put smiles on other people's faces, but also, I've lots of keepsakes and little stuffed animals on my backpack wherever I go. And it seemed to make sense to take him with me. The only thing, of course, is that when you're in Holland, it rains most of the time. So he has stayed indoor for a while. So after Christmas, it was like, okay, here's your vest, keep it on, and we're not going outside. But yes, it's I made this post, and in there were some pictures of Hanky Boo, so that's Cheeky Joe's bear, and there were a lot of pictures in different outfits for this little guy. So some people think that he's like my little kid. And I'm saying no, but the way that you position him and you make him look, but you want to make him look nice for the picture. And and that's my brain. My brain can't stand when certain things are not in place. Then like 1,000 times or more, I can keep changing it. It's like when there are dirty plates in front of me, it's easier to just take them from the table and bring them to the kitchen than in my mind picking them up and bringing them to the kitchen like 1,000 times. And well, that's the same way. If I see certain things, then I'm like, okay, I want to change that. I can better do it immediately. That saves me a lot of hassle. I believe it has to do with being something on the spectrum or being neurodivergent. So probably both. Anyway, this was about change. And if you are up for change, then of course I have something for you. I've got a worksheet with a number of steps on there. And well, actually, I also do have courses where you can actually experience the meditation and also learn how to work with the affirmations and how to transform things from negative to positive. So if you're like, well, that sounds like me, then make sure that you subscribe ladylexi.com/sign up for change. It's out there. In the meanwhile, I'll keep working on the back end, so it gets better and better. But yeah, it starts with the decision to make change. And I know people who have been working really hard, and I know people who have been working really hard, but it took them years. And then still they're dreading certain things because they're afraid of what might happen if they no longer can use it, reach out to it, have it as a fix. Let's put it that way. And well, it all comes down to making the decision that you want to change yourself. and not being stubborn, but actually doing the work. But everyone does it in his or her or their own time. So if you want to add something to it when it comes to change, please do. Remember, change is possible, but it's about how motivated are you? How willing are you to work on it? How much time do you want to spend on it? Are you willing to do a little something every day? Because that already makes a difference. Well, if you do, then let me know what you're doing. And if you need a little bit of help, then know that I'm out there, and just go to ladylexi.com/sign up for change.